All right, everyone, it's just about 10 o'clock right now. I'll get started by introducing myself as everyone just continues to file in here this morning. My name is Madeline Landis. I have not had a chance to meet everyone yet, but I joined the Long team at the beginning of this year. I previously worked at another Daikin rep in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm actually going to be doing the presentation on the next generation Daikin Rebel heat pump today. I'm going to be focusing primarily on the product itself, but then also just kind of touching on our strategy around the new low GWP refrigerants and why we've chosen to focus on R32 itself. Similarly to most long coffee breaks, which is going to be a quick 10 to 15 minute presentation here, and then we are going to draw a raffle at the end so that someone can win a little bit of a prize. If anyone has any questions, let myself know or your long sales rep, and we should definitely be able to get that answered for you. So let's get it kicked off here. All right, so like I mentioned, I just want to quickly touch on the new low GWP refrigerants. Obviously, a huge conversation topic here as we go into 2025. Daikin took a holistic approach on deciding which GWP refrigerant to look at, whether that be R5454B or 32. And ultimately, I believe, and Daikin believes also, that GWP alone is not necessarily a measure of the lifetime efficiency in the emissions that will result. So they chose a refrigerant that kind of looked at all of the different things, and that's that life cycle climate performance. It's a sum of the refrigerant's GWP, its performance rating, and then it is also reported in the carbon dioxide equivalency. So that just means that, like, if you look at just utilizing a lower GWP refrigerant, that you might be sacrificing efficiency, which ultimately is kind of moving you in the wrong direction. And that's why Daikin and several other different manufacturers across the world chose to standardize on R32. In addition to its low LCCP, there's kind of four main reasons that R32 is a great choice for the low GW refrigerant. Number one, like I mentioned, it is used worldwide already. It's already used in 120 countries with like 60 different manufacturers all over the world. So it's trusted, it's used globally. And then beyond that, I think what's kind of interesting about it is it's actually like the backbone refrigerant of R410A. Another kind of important thing to recognize is that it's also present in all of the low GWP refrigerant options that different manufacturers are using as we move forward. So if it's a blend, then most of the time it does have R32 in it. That being said, R32 is just a single component refrigerant, which allows it to be chopped off and recharged in the field because it has no glide. The last two reason is because it's efficient. Like I mentioned with that LCCP, is it gives you better capacity and efficiency while maintaining that lower GWP in comparison to R410A. And then lastly, it's widely available. Like I said, it's already used in 120 countries all over the world. Chillers, water source heat pumps, VRF, mini splits. R32 is already used globally. It's also non-proprietary, so it's never going to be expensive or hard to find. So those are just some of the many reasons that R32 is a great option for the low GW refrigerant offering. And just something I wanted to touch on briefly before we get into the Rebel heat pump details. I know that most of you guys already know the Rebel heat pump line. And I just want to be clear that as we move into the next generation of the Rebel heat pump design, we've kept the bare bones. We've just moved forward with a couple of key enhancements as we've redesigned around the R32 refrigerant. So if I think there's one slide to remember today, it's probably this next one. So as I mentioned, we're bringing a lot of the key features that we've already had in the Rebel heat pump, but we're just making sure that we focused on some new features that will make all electric buildings easier. I'm definitely super excited about the Rebel heat pump offering, just because I feel that it's something that's missing not only in our colder climate, but also as we go into the energized Denver and focusing on electrifying building, sorry. So first I want to hit on the new operation range. Whether in DOAS or mixed air applications, the operation range has increased tremendously. The unit in heat pump mode can now run all the way down to -10 in mixed air applications and down into your mid to low 30s for DOAS applications. I think something that's important and something that I'm excited about also is that now the heat pump will stay online unless your outdoor coil develops frost, rather than previously that heat pump would shut off at a preset dry bulb temperature. In addition to the expanded operating range, now we've expanded the backup heat offering. Previously, our supplemental heat did not allow for temperature rise over 60 degrees, and now it can be sized up to 80 degrees. I think that's especially important for our design ambient around -10, because it allows us to get up to that neutral room air value of just around 70 without any additional downstream heating or duct electric heaters. Another just important thing I wanted to quickly touch on is that the Rebel have now standardized and allows you to either select 1, 2, or 3-row hot water coils. And then I know that gas isn't the focus here anymore in the city of Denver, but outside of Denver projects, we have also brought forward all of the options for the gas. Last and not least, we do offer a dual fuel source with the gas heating. So instead of just like using gas heat up until a certain point, the Rebel actually uses the dual fuel heat sources so that you can maximize your capacity on the heat pump rather than just moving on to gas. I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up some of the challenges that I've seen in the market, and I'm sure that all of you guys have seen too, as we go all electric, and then specifically how I've seen Daikin with this new heat pump release address all of those things. So something that I found is that most heat pumps that are being utilized for all electric buildings, that the heat and the compressor load need to be simultaneously considered when you're sizing the new wire and feeds breaks, which obviously is going to make it more expensive and more difficult to retrofit. Additionally, like that's just going to drive up your MCA and your overall electric needs of the building. I feel that Daikin has taken some really creative approaches to alleviate these issues. I want to touch on them now, and then we'll dive into them on future slides. But first and foremost, we've increased the heat pump capacity, which will allow us to have lower electric heat kilowatts. Additionally, our controls are now a little bit more configurable, so they actually allow for auxiliary electric heat limits to be placed, so that you can really dial in how much electric heat is used for certain projects. And then finally, we now have dual point power as standard so that you can have a dedicated electric heat circuit rather than just one large circuit for both the heating and the cooling. So before we dive into the Rebel solutions for the all electric buildings, I think that it's important to just quickly touch on the different types of compressors that are used in RTUs. On this slide, I've kind of laid them out in good, better, and best. Most RTU manufacturers utilize the first two, fixed feed scrolls or the digital scrolls. As I'm sure most of you are aware, fixed speed scrolls have on-off operations, so they either operate at 0% or 100% capacity. Digital scrolls similarly pulse on-off. A 0% pulse occurs and the refrigerant is recirculated to the compressor. And then when the 100% pulse occurs, the refrigerant is sent to the system. I've worked on a couple of these projects, and I'm sure that those of you who have as well know that that pulsing kind of creates a terrible sound. That's eliminated when you look at using a variable speed inverter scroll. Not only does it alleviate that issues with the sound, but it also is able to ramp up and ramp down the speed to match the load that's required. This results in a super efficient machine with particularly precise control. So the reason that I brought up the compressors is because our inverter compressor actually helps solve some of the issues with going all electric. I kind of want to compare just quickly how a typical heat pump compressor works versus how a Rebel works. So if you look on the left, for a typical compressor, whether in heating or in cooling, you're using the same compressor speed. Now, if you move over to the chart on the bottom left, I just want to quickly explain the axes here. So on the x-axis, we have the outdoor ambient temperature. Then you can see the purple line. It might be a little bit little, but that's your typical heat pump capacity. The red line is the building heat demand. And then your green line signifies the Rebel heat pump capacity with that variable speed compressor. As all of us know, when it's colder outside, your heat pump has less capacity, but that's when your building demand is the highest. At a certain point, there's the crossover, and at any time to the left is when you'd be using your supplemental heating, whether that be electric, gas, or hot water. What's really cool about the variable speed compressor is it shifts that crossover point and it reduces the amount of supplemental heating that's required and increases the amount of time that you can utilize just using that heat pump, which I think is really important as we consider sizing those electric heating elements as we move into all electric buildings. The next solution that the new Rebel heat pump design takes into account is something that we refer to as the electric heat kilowatt limiting controls. I took a screenshot actually of the software that we use at Long. It's the Daikin software that we use to select and design Rebel heat pumps. There's actually a new dropdown that we didn't previously have before underneath the stages section of the electric heater. It's labeled Emergency Auxiliary Electric Heat Limiting. Now there's going to be 4 limit options. So whether it's 0%, 25%, 50%, or 75%. These different percentage values are the way that you can set up and vary the amount of electric heat capacity during the compressor operation. This is completely configurable on the electric heat controls. And what this does is it reduces the overall unit MCA while still allowing you to maintain 100% electric heat capacity if you need a completely redundant scenario. Just to put that into perspective, I wanted to consider like a 10-ton Rebel unit with maybe like a 54 kilowatt electric heater. If I chose that I wanted to limit that at a 50% kilowatt capacity rating, that means you'd have 27 kilowatts available when the compressor is running, and then you have 100% of the kilowatt 54 when it's not. If you compare the electrical requirements in that chart that you can see on the right of this screen, you can see that the traditional unit has a larger breaker and that it also has a larger wire size. So by using the kilowatt limiting control with the new Rebel heat pump release, you can reduce the gauges as well as the overall MCA of the unit. Another cool thing that the new Rebel heat pump has is it has that dedicated electric heat circuit that I mentioned previously. Um, on typical heat pumps with electric heat, you'd run one large heat pump wire, and now it allows you to run two separate wires, one to the electric heat, and then one for the cooling as well. Overall, reducing the wire size that needs to be ran to the heat pump, and also allowing for a little bit more redundancy with the heating and the cooling. Quick presentation here today, and I know that I've really just skimmed the surface on the new Rebel heat pump offering. Right now, it's available in sizes 3 to 31 tons. And like I said, it operates down all the way to -10 degrees in mixed air applications. And we will be expanding the tonnage range here within the next month. But just wanted to make everyone aware of our air source heat pump offering with the Rebel. But if anyone has any questions, make sure that you can just either reach out to me or to your long salesperson. And I hope everyone has a great Thursday. Thanks so much.